Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first Connecting with Survivors webinar. My name is Carly Leffel, and we're going to go ahead and get started because it is 10 a.m. I'm Carly Leffel. I'm a benefits counselor with TRS. I'm also a part of the outreach team, and I'm going to be your host today. With me, I have my colleague, Nick Stabler, who is an outreach coordinator for TRS, and he's going to be our presenter today. So as I mentioned, this is our first Survivor webinar. We're really excited to offer this because most of the time when members think of TRS, teachers' retirement system, they're going to think of retirement and retirement benefits. However, we also pay out death benefits, one of them being the survivor benefit. So, when you become a survivor, a member passes and they're surviving, whoever it is, survivor is getting that benefit, you become part of our TRS membership. So we wanted to offer this specific webinar because the survivor benefit is going to look a little bit different than retirement benefits. Okay, so as you can see up on the screen here, we have a QR code. We also have a URL where you can access the slides if you want to follow along with us. As you probably already noticed, all attendees are muted. Their microphones will not work, and that is simply so that our presenter can get through all of the information in a timely manner. Okay, last thing is that we will do a Q&A. We are going to wait until the end of the presentation because this is one of our shorter webinars, but at the end, I will open up the Q&A box in the toolbox, and then you'll be able to click on it, post a question, I will pose it to our presenter, Nick, and then he's going to answer them live. Okay, so again, thank you so much for being on here this morning, and I'm going to welcome in Nick.
All right, thanks very much, Carly, for the intro and for being our host today. And welcome into all of you, our survivor members who are in receipt of a monthly survivor benefit. As Carly said, you are a unique group of members within our larger membership. And so we want to make sure that you fully understand the benefit that you are receiving and how long it will last and how it might change, and the other benefits that you can access like health insurance. So let's go ahead and dive in to connecting with survivors. This information has been procured specifically for members who are already in receipt of that monthly survivor benefit. So we have a table of contents today. We'll start talking about eligibility. If you're already receiving that benefit, obviously you were deemed eligible. We want to make sure that you understand that eligibility continues or how it might change based on your age or your dependent kids or that sort of thing. We'll talk about how long those benefits last and how those benefits grow. There are annual increases that are built into that benefit structure. And so we want you to know what to expect as that benefit comes to you every year. We'll talk about full-time student certifications. Now, it may be if you are a widow or widower of a TRS member and you have no dependent kids that you don't have any idea what that is, and that's fine. But anytime there is a dependent child in the mix when we determine that initial survivor benefit, it's likely that you would have to start filling out those student certifications when that child turns 18. But again, we'll talk about that when we get into that part of the show. We'll talk about the rare instances when a benefit might be recalculated. Those are pretty rare circumstances. But again, if you have that coming in your future, we want to make sure you understand that. We'll talk then, after shifting gears about health insurance. Health insurance may be something in which you're already enrolled through the Trip or Trail program, but we want you to understand that if you are eligible for that plan, as you retire yourself or as you move into Medicare age, et cetera, that you have that other benefit available if you're not already on the Trip and Trail program. We'll talk very briefly about taxes and even more briefly about Social Security. And then we want to make sure that you have access to information about your monthly benefit through the TRS online account system. So we want to make sure you know how to access that online account because that's where you can access information about that monthly benefit, print tax forms or tax forms to fill out, that sort of thing. So we just want to make sure you have all of this information. And then, as Carly said, we'll get into Q&A. So hold those questions until we get to the end. And then we'll make sure, with this not being a huge group, that we get all those questions answered. Now, starting with eligibility. Again, if you're already in receipt of that monthly benefit, you are determined eligible already. But we want to make sure that you know that eligibility could stop if you're a dependent child or could pause if you're a spouse at a particular age. So let's talk about that. When we determine the eligibility for a monthly survivor benefit, we have to determine that you are a dependent of that deceased teacher. A dependent in our world means two things. You're either a dependent spouse or a dependent child. Now, the definition of a dependent spouse for us is that you have to have been married to that individual who passed away, that deceased teacher or administrator, or in a civil union with that person. That's an Illinois term that kind of predated universal marriage, but you have to have been legally bonded to that individual for at least a year prior to their death, with one exception. It could be that you are married to that person for less than a year, but you have a dependent child with that individual who passed away. That would be an exemption to the 1 year marriage rule, but that one is fairly rare. As a spouse, you have to be at least age 50 in order to receive that monthly benefit, or must have a dependent child. We can pay that monthly survivor benefit to a spouse who's under 50, provided that you have a dependent child with the deceased. Now, a dependent child has to meet several criteria in order to be considered dependent. Either they need to be under the age of 18, that child is always considered to be dependent, or if you have a child who is a natural or adopted child who is over the age of 18, but meets these other three criteria, being under the age of 22, unmarried, and still a full-time student, that dependent or that child is then considered a dependent child. Now, it could be you have an adult dependent child. That is another type of dependent child in our definition, and that is a child who is basically considered dependent by virtue of a disability. So that type of a dependent child may have to prove periodically that they remain disabled, unless at the point of the member's death they were determined to be, permanently disabled. Then we would not request those recertifications. But a child over the age of 22 would have to be disabled in order to be able to receive that benefit. But those are our definitions of a dependent beneficiary. Now, a question we get very often is, well, how long does the benefit last? Does it stop if X, Y, or Z? And so we want to make sure you understand how long those benefits will last. And again, the answer to that question is going to depend on whether you are receiving this benefit as a dependent spouse or as a dependent child. For a spouse, it's fairly simple. So for a spouse who is in receipt of that monthly survivor benefit, you will receive that monthly benefit monthly for your lifetime. So as the dependent spouse, once you start receiving that benefit, you are entitled to receive that benefit for your lifetime, regardless of how old you get, regardless of how long you have been receiving it, or regardless of whether or not you remarry. That's a question that came in advance of the webinar today. Someone submitted that question. What happens if I remarry? It no longer matters. It used to be that if you got married prior to a certain age, that benefit would stop, but that is no longer the case. A spouse of a deceased TRS member is entitled to receive that monthly benefit monthly for their lifetime. Even if they remarry 5 times, they still would receive that monthly survivor benefit. Now, there is one instance where the benefit may pause. So if you are in receipt of that monthly benefit as a spouse who is under the age of 50 and receiving that by virtue of the fact that you have a dependent child, if that child ceases to be dependent, if they turn 22, get married, or cease to be a full-time student, and you're still under 50, well, that benefit would pause until you, as the spouse, reach age 50, and then it would pick back up and continue again for the rest of your life. So for a spouse, with that one possible exception of the pause, you would continue to receive that monthly benefit for life. Now, as I said, a dependent child must meet certain criteria to be considered a dependent. So that dependent child would continue to receive the monthly benefit if they meet all 3 criteria. So if they turn 22, they no longer meet all 3 criteria. If they get married and are under the age of 22, well, then they would have not met all 3 criteria. If they cease to be a full-time student, well, then again, if they don't meet all 3 criteria, then that benefit would stop. So typically, if a child remains full-time student through their college years, it would be at the age of 22 or graduation that would stop. Now, the monthly benefit that you receive does accrue an annual increase, and this is from the January following the commencement of the benefit. So this is truly an annual increase. So for increases, there is a determination as to whether or not you are a Tier 1, the survivor of a Tier 1 TRS member, or the survivor of a Tier 2 TRS member. Most of you are going to be survivors of a Tier 1 member, but let's make sure that we are drawing this line so you know exactly what we mean by this. Membership in the system, not as the survivor, but as the teacher, as the participant, is either going to be Tier 1 membership or Tier 2 membership. The designation is determined simply by when that individual's service in our system began. not their retirement date, but when their very first service in the classroom or their very first service as a teacher or administrator began. If that was prior to January 1 of 2011, then your TRS member was a Tier 1 member. If that your first service in the state of Illinois as a public servant occurred after January 1 of 2011, well, then your teacher or administrator was a Tier 2 TRS member. So Tier 1 survivors are entitled to a 3% compounded annual increase to their gross benefit every January 1. That would then be reflected in the February 1 benefit check. If you're Tier 2, well, that increase is determined annually based on the prior year's rate of inflation. So the consumer price index for the previous year would determine that Tier 2 increase. That's either going to be half of that consumer price index or 3%, whichever is less. So that is capped at 3%. So you do get that increase annually, even if you started receiving the benefit as a new survivor in December, January 1, you're going to accrue that increase. So you don't have to be on the benefit for a certain period of time as a survivor in order to get those annual increases. Those just occur every January 1. Now let's talk about student certifications. And this is one that maybe you're filling out student certifications, but your student isn't actually receiving a benefit. You may wonder why that is. This is one that our survivor benefit staff wanted to make sure that we covered because they do get a lot of questions on it. And there's sometimes some concern about whether or not they need to be filling that out, and then they don't send it in and their benefit might pause. So let's just make sure we understand why we send these full-time student certifications. So a dependent child must recertify every semester after they turn 18. We have to know that all three criteria are met for that individual to be considered a dependent. So after that child turns 18, we're going to need a full-time student certification every semester until that person turns 22. So if they are a dependent beneficiary or are the dependent child of the beneficiary. So if you are the spouse who's receiving that benefit, even though we're not paying a benefit directly to your child, it could be that your benefit is contingent on you having a dependent child, or it could be that if you were to pass away, we just need to know that we have another dependent who could pick up that monthly benefit. So we do send these out. Even if you have a child who isn't receiving the benefit, we still need to send that out to know that that child who was dependent at the time that the member passed away remains dependent based on being unmarried and still a full-time student. So we do send those out, quite a few of them actually, every semester so that we can certify that, yes, that we do have these other dependent kids. Now, if a child were to leave school, so let's say that they are 20 years old, they've got 2 years of college, you have filled out your student certifications every semester since they turned 18, and then they leave school. We would stop sending those recertifications because once we get one back that says, this child is no longer in school, we're not going to send any more. But if that child is just taking a year off of college, for example, and then they go back a semester or a year later and they're still unmarried and still under the age of 22, you can contact TRS and we will send you a new full-time student certification and they can get that going again. We can get that process of every semester recertification going again. This is still important to protect that child and their ability to start receiving a monthly benefit. If you, as the spouse, were to pass away and still had a dependent child, we would continue paying that monthly benefit to that dependent student as long as they remained under 22, not married, and still a full-time student. Now, in very rare cases, typically where a member died young, we may pause a benefit if there is a situation where a person is under the age of 50 and receiving the benefit by virtue of the fact that they have a dependent child. But then the child reaches the age of non-dependence or stops meeting all three criteria. Well, then it could be that that benefit would pause, as we said earlier, but only until that spouse became age 50 and therefore requalified to pick up that benefit again. So then we would start paying again in that situation. There are cases where a person passes away while in active service or was receiving a small monthly benefit from TRS. And then they pass away and they still have a dependent child. There is a minimum benefit that TRS can pay, and that is $400 a month to a spouse. If that spouse has a dependent child with the deceased teacher, well, then that would become a $600 monthly benefit. So in the case where a person is receiving that $600 based on the fact that they are the spouse who also had a dependent child, and then the dependent child ceases to be dependent, well, that would trigger a recalculation of that benefit. We would have to lower that benefit from the 600 to the 400 as a base, but we would still calculate in all of the increases that would have accrued on that $400 up to the point that you had that recalculation. So you would not be receiving the same amount that you were. There would be a recalculation that would lower the benefit. But this is in a very specific case of having a benefit that was calculated or you being eligible to receive it simply based on the fact that you had this dependent child, and then the child ages out and then you no longer qualify for that higher benefit. Most of the time, the benefit is calculated as half of the pension that the deceased teacher was receiving. If you're a tier 1 survivor, if you're a tier 2 survivor, it's 2/3 percentage, 66.7% of the monthly benefit that that deceased teacher was receiving. So in most cases, that's just going to continue forever. That 1/2 benefit or that 2/3 benefit will just continue for the life of the spouse. It's only in these very specific situations, but they do come up, so we do want to address it, that benefit would be recalculated as lower. Now, let's talk about health insurance, which is kind of a fringe benefit to receipt of the survivor benefit. Some of you may already be taking advantage of the trip or trail health insurance that's available. But we want to make sure that you understand that even if you did not take that when it was first offered to you because you were still working and didn't need it, that health coverage remains available to you if your deceased teacher was eligible to receive that benefit. So for TRIP and TRAIL, and TRIP stands for Teachers Retirement Insurance Program. TRAIL stands for Total Retiree Advantage Illinois. TRAIL is the Medicare Advantage component of TRIP. So we're really talking about one program here. It's all TRIP. It's just that if you're over 65 and on Medicare, TRAIL would be your choice if you're already on Medicare and then using our program as a secondary coverage. The requirements to be eligible for TRIP or TRAIL as a survivor are essentially the same. It's based on one thing. Was the deceased teacher eligible for that TRIP or TRAIL benefit while they were living? And that meant, did that individual have at least 8 years of TRS service calculated into their own retirement claim, or did they have those 8 years of service in our system when they passed away? That would determine their eligibility for TRIP and TRAIL. That would also determine that dependent's eligibility for TRIP or TRAIL as a survivor. So that's what we would look at initially when that individual passed away. We determined, okay, this survivor is or is not eligible for TRIP or TRAIL. So if we indicated at that time that you were in fact eligible for TRIP or TRAIL as a survivor, you had that opportunity to enroll. If you did not enroll at that time, that is okay. You still maintain eligibility for TRIP and TRAIL health insurance for the rest of your period of dependency, which for a spouse would be for life. So in order to enroll in that program, you have to submit a TRIP participation election form within 60 days of that individual's death, of the deceased teacher's death. If you were enrolling at that time, that coverage always begins on the first of a month, and dependent children of that deceased teacher are also eligible as long as there's a monthly benefit being paid. So that's available not only to the spouse, but also to the dependent children of the deceased if the spouse is enrolled. Now, the second part of enrollment is that once you have indicated at the point of that claim that you are interested in enrolling in the TRIP or TRAIL program, then you send in that form to us, and then you have to call and select a carrier within 60 days of the effective date of that coverage. And then you would receive health insurance ID cards, dental insurance ID cards, vision insurance ID cards, and a prescription drug card from your chosen carrier. Now, those premiums that you are charged, and it is not free coverage, if those premiums are being charged to you, those are deducted from the survivor benefit that you receive. That is true both for the spouse and for the dependent kids. Now, a spouse, when we look at these premium charts we're going to see here in a moment, the spouse in the survivor world is the member. They are the benefit recipient. That's how they're designated on these charts. So that benefit recipient is paying one premium, and then the dependent child is paying another. Here are those premium charts. So this is our current premium for those who are under the age of 65, not yet on Medicare. on the left-hand side here. Then all the way over here to the right, we have those trail premiums, which are the Medicare Advantage program. So as I said, if you are receiving the benefit as a spouse, and you are using, for example, any one of our managed care plans, the open access plan or the HMO, you pay $370 monthly. That is for your own coverage as the spouse. Now, if you are a dependent child who is under the age of 26 and you are the benefit recipient, what happened there? And you are the benefit recipient, meaning if you're receiving that benefit directly to you as the child, well, then you would pay $121.18. That's your subsidized premium. If you are enrolled as the spouse and you want to add dependent children, those dependent children who are not in receipt of a monthly benefit themselves would be $484.89 per month. Again, this is all for the managed care plan. If you want the PPO, those premiums go up. That's $857 a month for the enrolled benefit recipient. That's you as the dependent spouse. The child who is in receipt of a monthly benefit themselves would be $308.40. That's on the PPO. And if you have a dependent who is on the program as a dependent child who is under 26 and on the PPO, that'd be $624.46. So these are a la carte premiums. There's not a family plan, so you would pay a premium for each individual who is enrolled. Now, that is on the non-Medicare side. So this is for those who are under the age of 65, not yet on Medicare. Once you go on Medicare, then everything moves over here to the right-hand column. So the individual who is in receipt of a monthly survivor benefit and is on Medicare, $7.35 a month. Huge reduction in what you pay for health insurance when you turn 65. But you have to be on Medicare. You have to have Medicare Parts A and B to qualify for that program. So you're still going to pay a Medicare Part B premium to Medicare directly. And then that $735 is what you would pay as the TRS survivor who's in receipt of a monthly benefit for your trail Medicare Advantage coverage. And that would be your secondary Medicare coverage, your prescription drugs, dental, and vision for $735 per month. Now, if you don't need Trip or Trail or did not need Trip or Trail at the time that you became eligible for a survivor benefit, you can still enroll electively every year during the open enrollment period. So the benefit choice period or the open enrollment period for non-Medicare enrollees is May 1 to May 31, typically. If you are over the age of 65 and on Medicare, your annual open enrollment period is typically mid-October to mid-November. And that's when you could electively choose to join the program. No clause against pre-existing conditions, no medical questions asked. We simply allow you into that program electively during that open enrollment period. Now, if you elect during that May open enrollment period for regular trip, that effective date would be July 1. So don't cancel your coverage that you already have on May 31. When you elect in May, that coverage takes effect July 1. If you're over 65 and on Medicare, enrolling in the Trail Medicare Advantage program, that mid-October, mid-November open enrollment, that dictates a January 1 effective date. So again, you've got an open enrollment month essentially, and if you elect during that month, you come on either July 1 or January 1, depending on if you're Trip or Trail. If you lose your other coverage, if you're currently employed through another employer, and you have that coverage available as a group through that employer, and then you retire or leave that position, we would welcome you into Trip or Trail the first of the following month. Again, all we need is a copy of that termination letter from that prior coverage saying that you're losing that plan, and that makes you eligible to enroll in our plan the first of the next month. That can be any time of year, no matter when you're losing that coverage. We just don't want you to have a gap in coverage. And when you turn 65, that is another open door, if you will, to electively enroll in Trail. If you're going to have Medicare available to you at that point, as most will, then you would be eligible to come on into Trail on the first of the month that you turn 65 in most cases, but it's whenever Medicare deems that you are eligible for Medicare. So these are your enrollment opportunities. This is something we really want to highlight. It could be that you've been in receipt of a monthly survivor benefit for years and didn't take that trip coverage when you first started receiving the benefit. We really want to make sure you understand that you have this coverage available to you electively. Even if you have been on it and dropped it, you're still welcome to join anytime you need the coverage or electively during the annual open enrollment period. Now, just as of July 1 of 2025, everyone who's in Trip or Trail has dental and vision coverage available. So this is baked into those premiums that I showed you a moment ago. It's not an a la carte coverage that you can drop. You can't just drop the dental and vision. You can't pick up just the dental and vision. It's just baked into that trip or trail coverage. So for that one premium, $370 a month or $7.35 a month, you have medical, prescription, dental, and vision, all for that one premium. Now, Medicare is something that some of you perhaps have not yet had to deal with. If you're under the age of 65 and not yet been Medicare eligible, that is eventually coming. So when you are turning 65, that's something that you are going to want to consider is, will I have Medicare available to me? And if the answer is yes, then the question is, do I want to enroll in the TRAIL program? Because that is something that is available to you only as someone who has both Medicare Parts A and B. So there's something called a Medicare eligibility checklist, and that is something that we encourage you to look at on our website. That is something that tells you step by step and kind of in timeline order what you should be doing to prepare for that Medicare transition, meaning from under 65 to over age 65 and eligible for Medicare. And that also typically means a transition from a previous health coverage onto TRAIL. So we don't know if you're eligible for Medicare. You've got to contact Social Security to determine that. But if you are, in fact, going to be Medicare eligible at 65 and you are interested in that TRAIL Medicare Advantage program, then you would also need to loop TRS into that so that we can make sure that you have proper paperwork and know exactly the steps to take to get yourself enrolled. Now, this is that trip to TRAIL transition checklist that I mentioned. This is available on our website. Basically, it's that you have to be enrolled in Medicare Parts A and B. You would want to enact that program or that process about 3 months in advance of turning 65. That's to Medicare, making contact with Medicare and applying for that benefit with them. Once you have Medicare cards in hand that prove your Part A and Part B eligibility dates, then you would call the My Benefits Service Center and actually elect to enroll in TRAIL. Even if you are already on TRIP and you are making this transition onto Medicare, you would need to call the My Benefits Service Center, provide them with a copy of your Medicare card, and make that election, that definitive election to continue coverage under TRAIL. Now, I have just one slide on taxes because the monthly benefit that you receive, regardless of whether you're receiving this as a dependent child or as a dependent spouse who is surviving, everybody owes federal tax on their TRS benefit, even if it's a survivor benefit. So that is something we want to make sure you understand. Every January, you will receive a 1099-R form, and that is kind of like a W-2 form. It shows what you received as income the prior year from TRS as a survivor benefit. It shows what amount of tax was withheld from that, and that is what you would use to file your taxes. Now, that form does not come to you from TRS. Just like the monthly benefit that you receive, whether you're receiving that as a direct deposit or as a paper check, that is going to come to you from the Office of the Comptroller of the State of Illinois, currently Susana Mendoza. So that envelope is not going to say TRS on it. It's going to have the seal or the emblem of the Illinois Comptroller, and it'll say Susana Mendoza, Comptroller, State of Illinois. So that's where that comes from. Don't throw that away. Keep good track of that until you get all of your tax forms together, because that is an essential form to file your taxes. Now, that is a form that you receive by U.S. mail. So that is not something you get electronically. It's not something you can retrieve electronically. It's always going to come to you as a paper form by mail. About the 10th of December each year, right after we have issued that 12th benefit check for the year on December 1, that's when we send a list of addresses over to our friends at the comptroller's office, and that's the address they're going to use to send you that 1099-R form. So we want to make sure you understand that if you are a snowbird, if you change addresses every couple times a year because you're going from a warm environment back to Illinois, that you make sure that the address that you want your 1099-R form to be mailed to is on file with TRS as of December 10th or prior to December 10th. The reason for this is that form, that tax form that's mailed by the comptroller's office, if it gets lost in the mail, you're going to need a duplicate. We don't typically fulfill duplicate requests until mid-February. So if you are in a situation who is going to move back and forth, maybe twice a year from Florida to Illinois or Florida to a cooler state, just make sure you keep that address current with TRS. That address can be updated online. That's the easiest way to do it. It just takes a minute. So if you log into your online account, which we'll talk about in a moment, just make sure in December that you've got the correct address on file. Now, tax withholding can be adjusted anytime. So if you have filed your taxes in February and you had to pay a couple $1,000s and you thought, well, maybe I'll have a little extra withheld so I don't have that big tax bill next year, that's fine. You can adjust your withholding amount anytime. You do that through a different form called the W-4P form. That is a form you can get from the TRS website. It links directly to the IRS website, but you can go to our website to access it. And you just fill out that form, send it into TRS. You can upload that one, and we'll make that change, and then that would change your tax withholding going forward. You can do that anytime throughout the year, anytime throughout your survivorship. You can change that anytime you need to. Now, if you're an Illinois resident, the state of Illinois does not tax income from TRS. That's considered retirement income because it's a distribution from a retirement system. So it is that survivor benefit that you're receiving is not state taxable in the state of Illinois, but every state has its own tax law. So some states may tax your TRS benefit, others may not. We can withhold Illinois state tax at your request if you want us to. If you think you're going to owe state tax on some other income, we're happy to make that withholding for you as a convenience. Additionally, if you live in any of the states that surround Illinois, with the exception of Missouri, then you can go ahead and have us withhold for that state as well if you owe tax in Iowa, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, or Wisconsin. Again, Missouri is not signed on for that, but any of those states that are listed, we can withhold state tax for that state at your request as a courtesy, but you have to tell us how much you want us to withhold. We just withhold a flat dollar amount. We don't know how much you're going to owe. So you'd want to check in with that state, find out what percentage they charge or how much you need to have withheld, and we're happy to withhold that. If you live in states beyond these collar states, beyond Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, Wisconsin, well, then you need to make sure you know what your tax liability is for the state in which you reside and how much you need to be setting aside then to make sure you can pay that tax bill at the end of the year. Because again, we can only withhold for those states that are listed. Let's talk briefly about Social Security because there has been a significant change in Social Security law during this calendar year. In January of 2025, former President Biden signed the Social Security Fairness Act. That act repealed a couple of laws that were part of the Social Security law that sometimes had an effect on people who were receiving both a TRS benefit and a Social Security benefit. Now, survivor benefits have never interfered with the Social Security benefit that you are eligible to receive. And the opposite works as well. Anything you receive from Social Security does not negatively impact the benefit that you receive from TRS as a survivor. So really the two do not impact one another, but we do want to make sure you understand that if you were previously denied a spousal benefit based on the fact that your spouse was in receipt of a TRS benefit, then perhaps you are not getting everything that you are entitled to now that law has changed. So we do want to make sure that you understand exactly what you're entitled to receive from Social Security, but we can't tell you that. You've got to work directly with Social Security to find out if you're entitled to a spousal benefit on that spouse's Social Security work record, or if you're getting everything that you're entitled to receive from Social Security on your own. So their number is on the screen, as is their website. So we encourage you to go out there and make contact with Social Security to make sure you understand the benefit that you are receiving from them. But again, just to reiterate, the TRS benefit that you receive as a survivor has no negative impact on your Social Security or vice versa. Now, we're getting toward the end here. We're going to talk about online account access, and then we will get to Q&A. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure you know exactly how to access your online account because there's a lot of things that you can do out there as far as interacting with the TRS benefit that you are receiving as a survivor. You can update your address, phone, or email right through that online account. So if you are a snowbird, just log in when you move in September, October to your warmer climate and make sure you get that address updated so that we can get your tax forms to the correct place. Or if you just change email providers or phone providers and you get a new phone number, you can just go out to your online account and make that change really quickly. We are not able to change addresses over the phone. We can change your phone number or email, but we cannot change your address over the phone. So really that is the most convenient way for you to get that address updated. If you are not an online user, that's okay. You can always change your address in writing. We do have to have our form filled out and notarized if you're going to change that address in writing. So again, I encourage you to use that online account for address updates in particular. There is something out there in the main menu of that online account called the Secure Document Upload Center. I've mentioned that you can submit forms to TRS like your request to change your tax withholding. or anytime you have anything you need to submit to us, if you're enrolling in TRIP and you want to submit that TRIP participation election form, the fastest and most secure way to do that completely eliminates the mailman or the mailing service from that process is to document upload center that document. So if you have it, you can take a scan of it. You can take a good picture of it with your phone, and that'll convert to a PDF, and you can just upload that directly through your online account. And then we have it instantaneously with no chance of it getting lost. Now, one thing you can access every month through your online account is your earnings statement. So we do not send you a pay stub when we directly deposit your monthly benefit. So if you want to know what I'm being paid and what they withheld for taxes and what they withheld for insurance and what is my gross going to be this next month, you can see that online account statement as soon as we have processed payroll, which is usually around the 20th of the month. You can go out there and see what that deposit is going to be that's coming up. So that is the probably the most important thing that you can do through your online account. But you can also download an annual statement of earnings if you need that for tax purposes. You can download an insurance premium confirmation letter, which is sometimes also used for taxes if you need to prove how much you paid in insurance premiums. You might get a reimbursement from some other plan and you need to prove how much you're paying for insurance. That's a fast and easy way to get it 24/7 is right through your online account. If you're applying for a loan or something and you need to prove your income from us, that's something else you can print directly from your online account. So that's a very useful tool without having to call or wait for the mailman to bring that letter that we might send you. There are also printable forms to update your tax withholding, that W-4P form, et cetera. If you are also a TRS member in your own right, you can download and use that beneficiary designation form to change your beneficiaries. These are all things that you can do through your online account. And once we get to February 15th each year, you can request a duplicate 1099 form through the online system, which we would then print and send out to you. Again, you can't access the form itself electronically, but the 1099 form can be duplicated and we can get that to you by mail, and you can make that request online. When you go to our website, there's a button that says member login. The member login button will take you to that My TRSIL account screen, and that'll give you the opportunity to enter your your username and password. If you don't have your password, you can use your member ID number to reset your password. But then once you've logged in, you'd be taken to that online account. There's a litany of items that are listed there that you can do through the online account. We encourage you to interact with your account that way. I'm going to leave this screen on the screen as we do Q&A, but I just want to highlight that if you need to contact TRS for any reason about the benefit that you're receiving, or just if you have a question, just call us, 877-927-5877. Our member service reps are on the phones from 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 p.m. If you can't reach us during that time because of work, send us an email at members@trsil.org. There's always a benefits counselor who mans that email box so that we can get you a written response within one business day. Our website, trsil.org, is a good place for general information. There's also some printable forms, and all of our brochures are in PDF format. That is also the portal to your online account. So we encourage you to bookmark trsil.org. Just below that are all of our online social media handles. So if you would like to follow us on Facebook, X, or Instagram, you've got that option on the screen, and also a YouTube channel. So if you would like to rewatch this presentation, it was recorded. So we will have that out there as a new video in the video library on our website and on our YouTube channel, probably in the next week or so. Below that is that number for the My Benefits Service Center. If you are already in the Trip or Trail program, or you have some questions about what might be covered or not covered, if you have a specific drug or something like that, that is one that that's a question you would pose to the My Benefits Service Center as they actually administer enrollment in those programs. So we'll leave that up for you as well. Carly, what questions do we have coming in the Q&A box?
Yes, we have one so far, but first I just want to say thank you, Nick, for a wonderful presentation so far. As we mentioned, this is our inaugural one, so really excited to have this all together. Great information. Everyone who is on here, if you look at your screen and go to your toolbar, there is a little bubble with a question mark in it. It says Q&A. So if you click on that, you will be able to type in questions, and now is the time to do so. As I said, we do have one in there, so I'm going to start with that one. Okay, so this member said, I am on Medicare Medicare Primary, and have a supplement. as part of a military retirement, can I enroll in Trail to take advantage of the dental and vision benefits and possibly the RX? So maybe can you address a couple of the things in there, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see the question there, and that's a great question. I see that you've indicated that you have TRICARE for life through the military. When you are in Trail, the one limitation that you have under Trail is that if you have Trail as a Medicare Advantage plan, you can't have any other supplement. You can't have a Part D drug plan in addition to Trail. You can't have another Medicare supplement in addition to that. So you would have to choose between TRICARE for life, which I think is free, and the Medicare Advantage plan that we offer. But you could not pick up just dental and vision benefits. So I think you'd probably want to have a conversation with TRICARE to see what would happen if you left that program, which I am not recommending. But I can say that if you were to enroll in Trail, you would not be allowed to also keep TRICARE.
All right, thank you. Okay, so aside from the annual increase, they're saying 3% tier one. Is there an adjustment once the survivor of the deceased reaches retirement age?
No, that benefit that we determine at the point of the member's death, the teacher or administrator's death, really defines the basis for your benefit going forward, with that one exception of a recalculation to the negative. There is not an increase beyond the normal annual increase that you would receive.
All right, perfect. Next is when do you find out if insurance changes for the next year? And is Aetna the only trail provider?
Aetna is the only trail provider. That's a single provider system, and that is a rolling contract. So that's always on a 5-year contract. I don't recall when this contract began, but it's been less than 5 years ago. So we know that Aetna will continue to be the carrier for the coming year. We know that Aetna has advertised that they are leaving the Illinois marketplace. That is not, when we talk about the Illinois marketplace, that is if you called as an individual looking for individual coverage, you would no longer have Aetna as an option in the Illinois marketplace. So that does not impact the contract that the state holds with Aetna to be the administrator for the Medicare Advantage plan. If there is going to be a change, that is always publicized in advance so that you know that change is coming. And again, that information would typically come to you directly from either the My Benefits Service Center or from the Department of Central Management Services. They actually are the plan administrator. They set that contract with that carrier for Trail. And that's true with the trip carriers as well. So anytime there's going to be a change, you would know in advance and you would be notified typically by mail.
Thank you. Okay, I accidentally skipped one from David. I moved it to answered, but he says, are there any issues with benefits if I move out of the state of Illinois permanently?
There is no negative there at all. There are always two things that I would want to highlight if somebody was in receipt of any benefit and was moving out of state. One is the issue of taxability, because in the state of Illinois, your TRS benefit, whether it's as a retiree or survivor, is not taxable by the state of Illinois. But moving to another state, you are subject to whatever tax law exists in that state. So you would want to know for sure what impact that was going to have on your tax liability for the year. The second would be insurance, and that is that if you are under the age of 65, living in the state of Illinois and using the TRIP program under 65, moving out of state means that you would likely have to change carriers because those carriers are determined based on your locale and your proximity to certain doctor networks, hospital networks, et cetera. But if you move out of state, you're kind of hitting reset on that. So you would not necessarily have the same insurance carrier available when you move out of state. So you would want to know in advance what is available. Am I going to have to change? And if I am going to have to change, what is available for me to change to in my new state? Now, if you're on Trail, as I said, is a single carrier program. Aetna carries the Trail program no matter where you live in the United States. That's a kind of what we call a no network PPO. So you can have that wherever you live. And the Trail program is always going to allow billing from any provider that accepts Medicare.
All right. Thank you. Great answer. Okay. This one is scenario. So this member is still working and they have insurance with their current employer. Also, they have Medicare. So she says, do I have to retire from my current employer to go on the Trail program?
Not as far as TRS is concerned. I mean, if you are on TRIP and if you are a person who is in receipt of the monthly benefit and turning 65, as far as we are concerned, you are eligible to join Trail. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, you can't have other coverages at the same time as Trail. You can have Medicare Parts A and B, and you can have Trail as your Medicare Advantage program, but you cannot have any other supplements. So you'd either need to leave the current insurance that you have, but as far as whether or not you are eligible if you maintain employment with that coverage available, well, that's a question for Social Security, Medicare. I don't know fully the answer to that question, but I would advise that you make sure you get all of those facts before you drop a coverage.
Okay, couple questions on where do I find information about, they said the Medicare supplement, so ours is like a Medicare Advantage prescription drug plan. So where do I find info on Trail or Trip, look at coverage, premiums, that thing?
Yeah, either Trip or Trail. You would go to our website, and in the search bar, you can put in either Trip summary or Trail summary. And those summary books or booklets, they're just really a 2 or 4 page brochure, depending on the plan. Those are going to show you the very most basic information about the coverage, the monthly premium, the deductible, the out-of-pocket maximum, et cetera. And that's what we are able to offer. If you have questions beyond that, in particular specific coverage questions, you would want to address those questions to the My Benefits Service Center or to Trail in particular. You can contact. There's numbers for that on these documents, and just make sure that you understand or that you're getting all your questions answered that way. You may even need to call Aetna if your question is very specific and what they might pay for certain services. But yeah, we can get you started at least with that Trip or Trail summary brochure, and you just go to our website for that.
All right, great. Someone is not sure if they are a survivor of a tier 1 or tier 2 member. How do they find that out?
Well, you certainly can call TRS and we can tell you that for sure. But again, if their very first service, and we're talking about the deceased member, if that person's first service in our state was prior to January 1 of 2011, then you are for sure that person was a tier 1 member. It would be rare that we only have a handful of tier 2 retirees. It's possible, I suppose, that somebody in our audience today could be the survivor of a tier 2 decedent. But that would be fairly rare. But again, if you have any question or concern about that, just call TRS. We're happy to confirm that for you.
Okay. Next question is, I have been on Medicare since age 65 and now have a Medicare Advantage. They're wondering if they're eligible because they were never on Trip, and their spouse, who was the member, was never on Trip, never on Trail.
Yeah, you would want to confirm that you were eligible for Trip or Trail by calling TRS. And again, we just want to confirm that that deceased teacher had at least 8 years of service in our system. That would have made them eligible for Trip Trail while in retirement, and that makes you eligible for Trip or Trail as their survivor. So you would call TRS and confirm that you were eligible. But just logistically speaking, if that requirement is met, then yes, you're absolutely eligible to join Trail during that annual open enrollment period.
And actually, that's the next question. When is the Trail open enrollment period?
Well, we are always a little bit vague because it depends on where the weekends fall in October and November. But typically, it is October 15 to November 15. That may have to be adjusted one way or the other or expanded by a day or two to accommodate for a weekend. We never wanted to start or end on a weekend because that shortens that opportunity. So they'll typically expand that. But it is in the fall. It's typically mid-October to mid-November is what you'll see published. But we should know here very soon what those actual dates are. And again, if you take advantage of that open enrollment period for Trail in the fall, that would be with a January 1 effective date. So don't cancel your current coverage until December 31 because it's the next day the Trail would pick you up.
Great. Where do I find my TRS member ID?
Oh, that's a terrific question. You can call us for that, or you can go to your online account, which you might not be able to access if you don't have your member ID. But once you get into your online account, you can print a TRS member ID card, and that would have your member ID number on it. But again, if you don't have it, easiest way is to just give us a call. Operators are standing by.
Yes. Okay. And then a lot of questions on the insurance.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of continue on that. So,
Sure.
if retired and on Medicare and on Trail, okay, sorry. So if they're saying if I do not like the new coverage, on Trail and need to leave Trail, would I be penalized? Are there anything to do with preconditions if I try to move to another insurer?
Well, from a TRS or trail standpoint, there you can leave anytime. If you're not satisfied with the coverage, you can drop that coverage anytime. I'm going to say personally that you want to make sure that you had another coverage lined up so that you do not have a gap in your coverage. But no, you could leave the trail program anytime. You can leave trip anytime. But you need to make sure again that you have something else on which to enroll. If you were to drop trail, you'd still have Medicare Parts A and B. But most people find that they need a supplement, in particular something that's going to cover their prescription drugs, because that is not covered through Medicare Part A or B. There's not a penalty as far as TRS is concerned. I don't know what we could impose as a penalty, but really, I think the question about penalty would be, am I going to be somehow penalized by the new plan? If I'm joining a new plan, are they going to have some sort of clause against pre-existing conditions, et cetera? But no, from a TRS standpoint or a state of Illinois standpoint, you can come on to Trip or Trail anytime you meet those eligibility criteria. You can leave Trip or Trail electively anytime.
Great, thank you. So this question is about the dental and vision. So this member is on trail. So as we know, they have the dental and vision, but they're also paying out of pocket for a different dental and vision coverage from a previous employer. Is it okay that I continue it? Can I continue it? Can you speak to that, Nick?
Yes, absolutely. We were very clear about not being able to have another Medicare supplement outside of Trail, but your dental and vision, you can have as many dental and vision coverages as you want, including the one through Trail. That is not a negative at all. It's not going to jeopardize your ability to remain in Trail. The dental and vision side is separate from the Medicare Advantage. It is another coverage that has been added to that Trip Trail coverage, but it's not through Aetna. It's not considered part of a Medicare Advantage plan. So yes, you can take as many dental and vision coverages as you want to, provided you feel that it's worth paying those additional premiums.
Okay, great. Can you remind us, how do we pay for the Trip and Trail premiums? Do we pay a bill or how does it deducted?
Great question. We simply deduct those premiums from the monthly survivor benefit that you receive on an after-tax basis, provided that the benefit amount that you're receiving is adequate to cover that, which is most of the time the case. Most people's benefit check as a survivor is large enough to cover their taxes and their health insurance premiums. But in the event that you are enrolled on your own, and then you've also added a couple of dependent kids on with you, could be that that's eaten up the entirety of your benefit after taxes, then we would bill you directly. Then we would bill you the difference directly.
Okay. This one it says, does Aetna, the Trail Aetna, have in and out of network differential coverages?
No, we are, like I said, we're a no network PPO, meaning as long as that provider, the doctor or hospital, accepts Medicare and will bill to Medicare, then Aetna will pay that. They are not considered out of network ever, as long as the provider will bill Medicare.
Okay. If a survivor member does not want to change anything for their trail during open enrollment, do they have to do anything?
No.
Easy. Don't have to do anything.
Love an easy question.
Yeah. Okay. So next question, I'm just see real quick. This is a really good question. Is my member ID the same as my deceased spouse's member ID?
It is not. When a spouse or when an individual passes away, their member ID number is eliminated. It's retired because it no longer applies to that person. When we are establishing new membership for you as the survivor, we assign a new member ID number to you.
Thank you. Last question. How do I know if I will still receive survivor benefits after my dependent kids turn 22 or are no longer in school?
You'd give a call, but to be sure, as long as you are age 50 at the point that your youngest turns 22, you would continue receiving that benefit. Again, it is very rare that there would be a recalculation or reduction of that benefit. Even the pause that occurs if an individual is under the age of 50 and has a child who is ceasing dependency, that is pretty rare as well. But please give a call. It's something you absolutely want to know for sure as to whether or not there is continuity for that benefit. So certainly give us a call. That number's on the screen. And as soon as we've got another one coming in, but as soon as we log out, we're right back to answering calls and that sort of thing. So just give a call. It's not one you want to leave to chance. We can't see your account while we're in this live webinar. So you absolutely want to make sure you get that answer directly.
Okay. And just something I want to note, some of the questions that were posed were kind of specific. So I did message you privately. So I mean, this last question I actually did message privately, but we can pose it to the group too. So if a member is on TRIP prior to 65, will the premium go up automatically if the member is not yet on Medicare?
Um, I'm assuming this means that the individual would not be eligible for Medicare at 65. Is that fair?
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe talk about that, but then also if they do move to trail, maybe like both scenarios.
Sure. I'll address that question in a couple possible ways. If we've got an individual who's under the age of 65 and on TRIP, you will see an annual premium increase. That's just the nature of the beast. Premiums go up every year. There is a premium growth cap of 5% per year, so you don't see that premium go up 20% a year or something like that. It actually went up a little bit more than 5% this year because they had added that dental and vision coverage. But when you are under 65 and enrolled in TRIP, you would just expect a premium increase every July 1 reflected in the August 1 check. Now, if you are under the age of 65 and on TRIP and transitioning to trail, then you would not see a premium increase if you are eligible for Medicare on the first of the month that you turn 65, because you'd go directly from TRIP to trail when you turn 65. The likelihood that as a 65-year-old you do not qualify for Medicare is fairly low. But we do have another premium. Let me see if I can dial back. I don't think we kept that premium. But let me just dial back to the insurance slide here. Close your eyes if you don't like the. Oh, no. We do have our not Medicare primary age 65 plus premium chart here. So if you were paying $370.76 a month under age 65 and you hit 65 but don't have Medicare, you would see a premium increase to $503 per month. If you then later become eligible for Medicare, we'd welcome you into trail the first of the month after you turn, or the first of the month that you become eligible for Medicare, and that would drop your premium to the trail premium $735. I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, please call.
Yep. Yeah, no, that I think that was good. All right. One more question that popped in. I am currently receiving a TRS survivor benefit based on my spouse's employment time with both TRS and IMRF, so Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Do we, TRS, count the years in both programs for my 8 years of eligibility for trail?
That is a good question, and the answer is no. Under the rules of TRIP and trail, you have to have had at least 8 years of TRS service. So that would be earned service, converted sick leave service, or purchased service into our system. There has to be 8 years of TRS service in that deceased member's claim or in their work history in order for you as the survivor to qualify for trail or TRIP.
Yep. All right, thank you. So as of right now, those are all of the questions. Thank you so much. Those were great questions, everyone. So thank you for your time this morning. Nick is going to leave the contact slide up for just a moment. But yeah, if you have other questions that you think of later on, as we said, you're a member. You're part of our membership. So this is your contact information for TRS. We are happy to answer any of your questions. And Nick, thank you again for a wonderful presentation and all of your live answers. That was great. Any parting words?
Only thank you for tuning in today. As Carly mentioned, this is our inaugural Survivor Benefits webinar. Now, we will be offering these on a monthly basis, so you will have the opportunity to watch again live. Or if you think of a question after the fact and you don't want to call, you'd be welcome to log in again in the future. We'll make these available on our online calendar that will be coming up shortly. And that is a way that you can access this anytime that you want. You can also watch the video again on the YouTube channel, as we mentioned. But again, we feel like you are a unique, or if you want to use the S word, you're a special group of members for us as survivors. You may or may not have TRS service of your own, but you are no less a member, and we do want to make sure that you have a full understanding of the benefit that you receive. These webinars are general. We can't see your account when we've got you live, but anytime you have a question, please do not hesitate to reach out. Our member service reps and our benefits counselors are the ones who answer the phone. They can absolutely help you. But again, we just want you to be secure in the knowledge that your benefit is what it is and how long it'll continue. So thank you again, Carly, for doing the heavy lifting as host. She really does the majority of the work here in answering those questions behind the scenes. So again, thank you to Carly. And again, one more time, thank you to all of you.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a great day.